how far back can you trace your family? Because it's through them that this whole idea of creation, revelation, and redemption has come down to us. So I think it's nice to welcome our ancestors into the circle with gratitude for what they've given us. And it's also, revelation is a collective experience, so this helps everybody to enter into the room. The theme for this time together is Revelation, the Slow Reveal. And in my Jewish practice, my practice is centered largely around trying to remain mindful of God's presence in the world. And Judaism provides so many tools for doing that. But it wasn't until we started planning this session that I thought about Revelation itself as a topic. And so in this session, we're going to look at how Revelation might be part of everyday life. And I'd like to share with you the way that it comes up for me and some things that I hope you'll find useful. So most of these things come from my own practice. If we could have the first slide up, Sherry, I'd like to go over what we're going to do tonight. Sherry, Brenda, thank you, by the way, for what you're doing. Appreciate it. So I would like to talk a little bit about, by way of introduction, about our vision of Rav Kook, and talk a little bit about the varieties of revelation, and talk about the four worlds and how they relate to revelation. And then we'll do an exercise in seeing the four worlds in the everyday world. Some things I'd like to say about the guidance that we get from the Aleph Bet about revelation. And we'll look at Jacob's dream, Jacob's revelatory dream, and some practices about awakening to revelation that Judaism provides for us, and then some ending remarks. Sherry, I wonder if could you help me? While something's on the screen, I can't see my notes. Is there a way to do both those things at the same time? And if not, just please take the slide down and I'll go to my paper notes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure how to do that.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'll just ask you to come in and come out with it then.
Okay.
So as Rabbi Irwin said, and as Sally so beautifully said for us, the mindset for dealing with revelation, I think, could be somewhere between sleeping and waking, or the mindset of you have in reading a poem, that we want to bring our whole brains to this process, both sides of our brains. And maybe something of what's said tonight by the speakers, they come up to mind somewhere down the road as an idea or a memory or a prompt that'll reconnect you to the possibility of revelation, as it does for all of us. So to set the stage, I'd like to start with what Rav Kook says about the Aleph Bet. There's a book called Rosh Milin, in which Rav Kook, who was a first chief rabbi of Israel, wrote a book about the letters and what they have to teach us. And I'd like to start there. And if we could look at the first slide that says Aleph elements. So this is an Aleph. And one of the ways to look at Aleph is to say that there is a world above, as we're taught, and a world below, and that there's something that connects both of them and both veils both of them from each other. And in this Aleph, there's a teaching about revelation. So if we could look at the second slide, I'd like to show you what it is. So Rav Kook says, in Rosh Milin, he says that the thinnest possible filament from the world above passes through the veil, and that thin filament of energy from the world above generates everything that we know as the world below. Okay? So there's a passion that I think is a human passion to try to go up into that energy field, to lift the curtain, to pierce the veil, and to find the trail back to the source. And that is the quest for revelation that comes up in big ways and in small ways. It comes up, we call it lots of things. We call it getting back to the garden. We call it re-enchantment of the world. We call it having a beginner's mind, being open to the forces of revelation in the everyday world. Okay, Gary, could you take that slide down, please? And we'll go on. So we take a lot of paths to try to do this. Religion, philosophy, mythology, scientific inquiry. But I think that the goal is pretty much the same in all of them. To know the source from which we come, to learn how we should live, and to engage the process of our going from this life into the next life. And so for me, Judaism is our version of that quest for knowing the source, knowing how to live, and how to leave this life. Our model for that is what happened at Mount Sinai. Forming a Jewish identity, whether it's, or in fact, a Christian identity or a Muslim identity, brings us to reflect on what happened at Sinai, where something happened, something was revealed. We had contact with the source. So humanity's been parsing that experience for 3,500 years now. Every denomination, every religion has its own opinion about what that something was, but everybody generally agrees that what's being described is an experience of revelation, followed by the making of a covenant. And Shavuot is a celebration of that moment, the revelation of the covenant. So in our own quest, we could look to Mount Sinai for guidance, and how did that process take place? The thing that's striking to me about it is not the revelation itself, but what happened beforehand. In the story, God instructs Moses to tell the people to prepare themselves for revelation by washing their clothes and remaining pure, sexually pure and pure. They're such mundane instructions, and yet they tell us an important message, that revelation must be prepared for. There's the giving. We hope the source will give it to us. It's a mystery and it's totally out of our control. And then there is the receiving. And the receiving is something that is in our control. The receiving is something for which we can make ready. So if you'll put up the next slide for a moment, please. Nope, one back, please. Oh, no, I'm sorry, one forward, please. Sorry, Sally. Sherry. Okay. No, we're not at the right one yet. It's called, nope. It's called, I'll give you a name, I'll give you a clue. It's called Varieties of Revelation. Nope.
Sorry, I'm getting all the good stuff here.
Okay, it's a preview of a lot of stuff we're going to see.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't seem to have it right here.
Okay, so then I'll just maybe take it off and I'll just talk about it then. So there are two varieties to revelation that the sages describe to us. One is divine revelation. That's what we're talking about, what happened at Sinai. It's contact with some kind of supernal or luminous energy. And so the picture is the Israelites standing at the foot of a trembling mountain that's topped with a cloud. Yeah, great, thank you. It's topped with a cloud. There's thunder, there's lightning, and God speaks. So that's called divine revelation. And historically, it's usually connected to a being. Somebody has that contact with the numinous quality or the supernal quality. There's another kind of revelation that's, I think, more the topic we have tonight, which is general revelation, which is just being aware of the source of creation, being aware where, making contact with the divine energy in the everyday. There's a Buddhist teaching that I like about from a teacher named Dogen, a 13th century teacher, who says, mountains and oceans have whole worlds of innumerable wondrous features. We should understand that it is not only our distant surroundings that are like this, but even what is right here, even a single drop of water. And also from Dogen, he says, grasses and trees, fences and walls, tiles and pebbles, all expound the Dharma. So the teaching is that revelation can be found in anything and everything. And that the thing that makes it possible is to be ready to see it. Okay, maybe please take that sound slide away. So Shavuot is generally the time. Just one, please. Shavuot is traditionally the time when we observe the yahrzeit of the Baal Shem Tov. And so I think we could begin our study there. So the Baal Shem Tov, the great Hasidic teacher, taught that God is constantly recreating the world, microsecond by microsecond. It's God's energy that brings all this into existence and maintains it in existence. So wherever one goes and whatever one does, it's possible that we can experience a deeper spiritual significance that parallels mundane reality. Every place you look, it's possible to see God's work. And Judaism provided a map for navigating this experience, and it's called the Four Worlds. Rabbi Stansel teaches the Four Worlds this way. He says, the physical world in which we live, the objectively observed universe around us, is actually composed of innumerable realms of worlds. So I learned about the Four Worlds through Rabbi Gesher Shalomi, and these are his descriptions of these four worlds. And we'll start at the top, and we'll go to the bottom of this list, but with the understanding that each of the worlds is contained in all the other worlds. So it's not a hierarchical list, each one is contained in the other ones. So the first one is Asaya, this objectively physical world of action that we experience through our bodies and our senses. The second world, called Yetzirah, is the subjective world of vital feeling. The third world, Beriah, is the symbolic world of the intellect and of thought. And what's called the highest world in this, if you had a hierarchical view of this, the absolute, the highest world, is deep divine intuition and beingness with God. So these are big and deep ideas. And it's possible that we can use these ideas to engage the everyday world and open ourselves through these ideas to the possibility of revelation by seeing in the everyday world these different dimensions. So please, if you take this sign off. So I'd like to suggest that we do an exercise together that has to do with the four worlds. On the screen, Sherry will put up a series of slides. You were introduced them to a minute ago. Here's the exercises I'd like to propose that we do. Each slide will be on the screen for about 15, 30, 20 seconds, something like that. Look at each slide see how you react to it. Go on to the next slide. And then when they're all done, another screen will come up. And there'll be thumbnails of all the previous slides. And on the bottom of that screen, you'll see there'll be a circle divided into quadrants. We'll call those quadrants the 4 worlds. In each quadrant, there's a question. And I'm going to invite you to take 2 or 3 minutes to write the answer to that question for the image that you've chosen from this selection. You'll see the thumbnails. You'll choose your image and write something about that in the context of the world in which we're at that time. I'll mention to you that it's part of this practice is that even though you may have more you want to say in one world or become more involved with one of the worlds, that it's useful to keep going when the time comes, when we ask you to move on. It's useful to go to the next world and do the practice in that world as well, so that you do all 4 in the time that's allowed. Okay, if anybody has any questions about that, you can please put them in the chat and I'll try to deal with them there. I think I can open, I can open the chat here. Okay, so let's give this a try. Let's see how it goes. And the questions, I'll preview the questions to you now. The questions are like this. In the world of Asiya, this world, the mundane world that we're living in now, how would you simply describe the image? What is it that you see? Colors, shapes, who the characters are, what the landscape is, whatever it is you're aware of. In Yetzirah, the world of feeling, the question is, how do you feel about what you've just described? In the world of Beriah, the world of the intellect, the question is, what do you think about that image? What are your thoughts about it? What does it invoke for you as a mental process? And in the world of Atzilut, there's the mystical question of how are you and the image the same? What is the identity between you and the thing that you're looking at? So the questions will move hierarchically, as I said, from the mundane to the supernal, but this is just for the sake of the exercise. All the worlds exist simultaneously. Each one contains all the others. It's a process, you describe it as inter-inclusion. It's just like the Sephirotic tree, each one is in all of them. Then you'll have a couple of minutes to write in each question. And at the end, if there's time at the end, we may have time to share some of that, but we'll just see how that goes down. If you have something that you haven't finished writing, just jot down a quick note to yourself and then please move on. Okay, so Sherry, if you're ready, let's start with the first slide and maybe let's put them on a 20-second or so rotation, and then we'll have the 7th slide. Yes. 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 Real quick. So here's the 7th slide. There are the thumbnails up above and below this quadrant with the 4 questions. Let's start please where the red dot is. We'll call that the world of Asiya. We'll begin the clock and we'll say, please describe just how you see that image. Okay, please begin to finish what you want to say in that world about the image and how you perceive it. And please move to the world of Yetzirah. What do you feel about the image? What feelings come up for you about the image?
Are we supposed to just tell you or write it in our chat?
Please write it down on the piece of paper that you have with you. This is for you personally. Okay, you begin to finish that up. Jot any notes down you want to come back to later if you do. And let's move through the circle again and go into the world of Beria, the world of intellect, and examine what thoughts you have about the image. What thoughts come up for you? Please begin to finish up in this world, the world of Bria, and move in a moment into the world of Atzilut, the world where Rabbi Gesher Shlomi says, where it's not you praying, it's God praying as you. And the question in this world, the world of Atzilut, is, in the unity of God, how are you in the image the same? So, and once again, please finish up, and we'll come back together. And Sherry, if you'd be so kind as to take this slide off the screen, we'll go forward. So, while this exercise is going on, I'd like to share with you, if I may, so what happened for me while we're doing this. So the context is Revelation, our conversation together. So while I'm watching my clock and the timer, a little fly comes across my desk. And because we're doing this exercise, I say, okay, I'm going to do this exercise with this fly. What do I see? I see a little black fly. I can't see it very clearly. It's got wings, I know, because it's flying, but all I can see is this little black fly going across the screen, which makes me a little, I don't know, nervous or makes me feel a little, gee, why is there a fly here? What should I do about it? So the feeling comes up. And so I begin to think about the fly and why is the fly here? Where did it come from? And how am I the fly and the fly and I the same? And I realized all of a sudden I see the fly in a new way, because the fly is made up of DNA just like me. It was born just like me. It will end just like me. It has a life, it has experience, it has desires. And in fact, we share a lot together. So another example is, let's say, when I use trees a lot for meditation. And if I'm driving down the road and I see a tree, it's a tree. But if I look at the tree as a living being that's standing in its own place, standing silently meditating in the way that I'm trying to silently meditate, the tree for me then takes on a new being. In a sense, it reveals itself as itself. So the purpose of this exercise is to practice having the world reveal itself in that kind of way. And if we have time at the end, I hope we do, and I'd like to hear what other people have to say about this, or anything that you care to share. But for now, I think we have to move on. Yeah, okay, good. So we will, please. Some of us have studied together the Aleph Bet, and we started out with this Aleph from Rev Cook and talked a little bit about a way to look at the letters that tries to divine the spiritual teaching of that letter. And there is in the Aleph Bet a very hopeful and positive teaching that comes between the Aleph and the Bet. If we can put that slide up on the screen, please, Sherry, rather. So the first letter we talked about earlier, Aleph, is kind of the world to come and the world that's here, and the veil between them. And the Aleph, it has a numerical one letter value of 1, and so we ascribe that to God. The second letter is Bet in the Aleph Bet, and by its very form, the spine on the right side of it, the up and down the vertical spine, it creates a barrier to seeing the source. And the Bet is, you'll notice, open to all the other letters of the Aleph Bet, the letters out of which the world is created. But to get back to God, there's a barrier, there's a line. And that line is the same in the sense as the veil in the Aleph that divides the world above from the world below. But in the orthography of the Bet, there's a very interesting feature which makes the Bet, and that is that in the base of it, there's a little tiny stub that pierces the vertical line, pierces the vertical axis, and leads back to the Aleph. So some people call this fanciful. There's a lot written about it. A lot of people have seen these things in the letters. I happen to think that this is something that is actually going on in the letters that teaches you this in a way. And the question comes up, if the Bet says it's possible to return toward, maybe not reach, but return toward the one, how do you go about doing that? And the answer is, of course, that old joke where a man goes up to somebody on, a young man goes up to an old man in New York on the street and says, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me how to get to Carnegie Hall?" And the old man says, "Sure, I can. Practice, practice, practice." So that's the subject of the rest of our talk today. This time we'll spend together is how do you get back to how do you get to Carnegie Hall? How do you get to Revelation? Okay, could you take that slide off, please? There is one other letter in the Aleph Bet that has also a lot to teach us about this. And it really relates back to this 4 worlds exercise. In the Torah, Avram and Sarai were the original Jewish people. And in the course of their lives, God inserted the letter He into each of their names. Avram became Abraham, Sarai became Sarah. And the question is why? What is God? What is God? And what does the Torah tell us about that? Well, in Torah and in Jewish practice, He is the glyph that represents Adonai. If you want to abbreviate Yod He Vav He, it's often written just with a He. And curiously enough, He is also in Hebrew the definite article, the. It's a prefix of a word, it's the. What that means is the difference between an apple and the apple, the difference between a cup and the cup. So if you see the child, the tree, the cup, the fly, it moves us from the abstract to the concrete. It moves us to the actuality of this very moment in space and time. And this tiny internal shift can open us to the experience of everyday revelation, to see things as they are. If you take a minute to consider some object near you is first perceived just as a member of a class. Oh, there's a person there, there's a lamp there, there's a table there. But then it's also its own unique self in this never to be repeated moment. It's its own shape, its own color, its own destiny, the light falling on it just so. And maybe, seen that way, it will reveal itself as itself. It'll do this in this here and in this now. And that's the revelation not only of God in this world, but of the world itself. The world will reveal itself, and we'll talk more about that. I think the paradigmatic story of this process of revelation is Jacob's story in the Torah. I think I'll just read it really quickly. So everybody knows this story. I'll just go through it because it's got a great punchline. So Jacob left Beersheba and he goes to Haran. He comes on a certain place and stops there for the night. The sun is set. He takes a stone and puts it under his head to lay down in this place. And he has a dream about a stairway set on the ground and its top is in the sky. And messengers of God, angels, were going up and down it. And beside him is standing Adonai in this dream, who says, I'm Adonai, the God of your father, the ground on which you're laying with, and which I assign to all your offspring. Your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread out east, west, north, and south. Remember, I'm with you. I'll protect you wherever you go and bring you to this land. And here comes the big finish. Jacob awakes from his sleep and he says, surely Adonai is present in this place, and I did not know it. Shaken, he says, I'm quoting the Torah now, he says, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven. This place is the abode of God, and this place is the gateway to heaven. So the Hebrew for what Jacob says is Ve'anochi lo yodati. And it's been translated two ways. So let's see. Maybe Sherry, could you put up a slide and we'll talk about the slide for a second? Next one up, please. Next one, please. Okay. Ve'anochi lo yodati. So in translations of the Torah, this is often translated as I did not know it. But Rabbi Lawrence Kushner, wrote a book, that's the title of the book, is I did not know it, in which he reports on how 13 sages of Jewish history have responded to this dream. And Rabbi Kushner likes this, I did not know it, this truth. And it's found in the text, and I put this up here just for people who might be interested in the Hebrew of it. It says, Anochi means I in the sense of the realized I. The Ten Commandments begins, Anochi Adonai. I am God. It's I, the unity of being. Yadati, the last word in this expression, the prefix makes it I. Yadati means know, to know. Yud Dalet Ayin is the root, and Tav Yud at the end makes the suffix makes it I. I know, and lo is the negation. So I did not know. So the teaching that I think is, for me, interesting in this is that there's the little I, as Jung would call the self with the little s, and there's the realized I, the individuated I. If you will, the I that's experienced something about enlightenment, which is fleeting, of course, but a real experience. You can read that story as Jacob realizing the difference between his mundane self, the I of Yadati, and the enlightened real self, himself as Anochi, as being in the fourth world, being in the world of Atzilut, the world of unity with God. And we're human beings, nobody can hold on to that. It's a fleeting experience, but it's a fleeting experience that can be re-engaged and re-engaged and re-engaged through our practice. So what does that say? What does it mean to live in that world? Well, it means, like we were talking about angels before, it could be that an angel is standing next to you in line at Safeway. It could be that miracles are the everyday work of the Spirit. And in terms of V'anochi lo yadati, it means that we can inhabit both worlds at the same time. This world of concrete reality is the doorway to the divine. And Judaism has a lot to tell us about that, and a lot of practices to help us walk on that path. If we could take this slide off, please, Sherry, I'd like to go to the next one. I'm sorry, Sherry, please. That was a confusing instruction. That's what I'd like you to do. Yes, please take it off. Thank you. Okay. So the Jewish day starts with practices that I think are initiate every day the possibility of revelation. There are Jewish practices structured that constantly cultivate mindfulness. What are some examples? We're enjoined to recite 100 blessings a day. The fixed time blessings when you pray, the blessings that accompany the mitzvot, the blessings of special experience like eating a cookie or seeing the ocean for the first time in a long time. So Judaism is structured to remind us all the time to be mindful of God. So my friend Barry Barkin calls the path of blessing. You walk the path of blessing. It keeps us attuned to recognizing that the source reveals itself inside our experience. And it begins each day, it can begin each day, when we open our eyes in the morning. There's a prayer that we're told to say in the morning. As soon as you open your eyes, you're still laying in bed. It's a prayer for gratitude, what's about to be revealed, what's about to be experienced. The prayer is called Moda Ani. Moda Ani, I give thanks before you, living in eternal source, for returning my soul to me with compassion. Abundant is your faithfulness. Returning my soul to me. It's the statement of giving and of receiving, which is the paradigm of the revelation process. Something is being given beyond our control. Something is being received for which we can express our gratitude. Okay, please take that slide off. So I'll speak to you, I'll share from you, if I may, for a minute, my personal experience. There's a moment in the morning between the bedclothes and getting dressed when we stand as we were made. It's the moment that's referred to in the morning blessings when we thank God for clothing the naked. You know, in the Shachari service, we say, thank you for making firm my steps, for opening my eyes to see, and for clothing the naked. I take that as that's talking to me. And in that moment between bedclothes and garb, putting on the world again in the form of my clothes, that's a moment when I can open myself to revelation.
Yeah, sure. Just
Yes.
a quick reminder that the room will be closing in about 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Barbara. So, okay, I'm going to jump ahead to some stuff. There's one thing I would like to end the thing with then. I have a favorite poem that was written by Franz Kafka, who was a Jewish Austrian novelist and poet, a tortured soul, but he wrote this really fabulous poem. And Sherry, if you could put that last poem on the screen, I'd like to end with this poem. It's a very, very final slide. Here's Kafka's poem. You need not do anything. Remain sitting at your table and listen. You need not even listen, just wait. You need not even wait. Just learn to be quite still, quiet, still, and solitary, and the world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet. So I wish for everybody and for myself and for the whole world this experience of an ecstatic experience of the everyday world. And I invite you, I know my friend Basha is going to talk more about the Jewish-Buddhist connection, which is kind of laced through my remarks here today, and I recommend her session to you. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you got something worthwhile out of it. I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to share anything, but hopefully that'll happen on another day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gesher. The room actually will be, I'm going to stop recording now.